Welcome into the live desk. I'm Janae Hancock, joined by the one and only Sharon Chen. Welcome, Sharon. How's it going?
Oh, it's going great. Thank you for having me today.
Of course, I think, it's been a long time since I've had you
It has
here
been a while.
at the live desk, but you're a busy woman, so I do appreciate you coming on to take us kind of behind the story of something that you've been focusing on, and that is a very important issue, eating disorders, specifically here locally, because we know it's a problem across the nation. And Sharon, this is something that's not really talked about very often. But tell us a little bit more about what you learned and maybe who you spoke to.
Well, this is something that's interesting. I mean, it's kind of the taboo subject, right? If you are dealing with an eating disorder like anorexia, bulimia, or binge eating, these are issues that are usually kept quiet. You don't really want to come out and talk about it. And I found that that was the case even when I tried to find someone to talk about the struggles that they may have faced, because when we do the story, we do have the experts that we talked with from Children's Mercy Eating Disorder Center, but we always need that person to kind of give us a voice of somebody who actually experienced this. And so I had a real struggle with that. You and I had talked about this a little bit earlier. I had basically messaged every Facebook support group that I could find and Googled all the different support groups here in Kansas City. And I was able to find this young woman that finally got back to me. But it took a couple of months, I must say.
And I do want to take a look at that woman you were just referring to. This is Jessica. We'll get a little bit more into her story here in a bit. But Sharon, I do want to run through those statistics that you have included in your story. Cases have actually climbed within the last decade, as you mentioned. And according to the National Eating Disorder Association, nearly 30 million people here in the U.S. will experience an eating disorder in their lifetime. Just kind of taking that in is already shocking within itself. But as you continue to go on, researchers say that 95% are between the ages of 12 and 25. And more than 1 in 5 teens will show signs. Okay.
Yeah.
That is a lot, like I said, to take in. But as we talk about the age group, let's kind of focus on that. Do doctors and experts, do they believe that social media plays a huge role in that?
Absolutely. It's a huge role, social media, but also a lot of these kids still dealing from the impacts of the pandemic. And so they've had a lot of mental challenges in the recent years. Now you add on top of what they dealt with the pandemic, social media, and any other pressures that they may face in school, bullying and whatnot. A lot of these kids now are struggling when it comes to eating disorders. Let me add one really startling statistic onto the one that you talked about. There's also a study recently, this is recent, in the last few months, done by Stanford University, that said the number of kids and teens ending up being hospitalized for the eating disorders are 6 to 7 times the amount of what they have been in the last decade. That is stunning. To learn that our kids are ending up in the hospitals because of these eating disorders.
And I was going to ask, as a mom, for you, how did it feel kind of listening to all these statistics and learning all about it and knowing that there are children out there that are suffering?
It made me sad.
Yeah.
It really made me sad to know that we look at eating as, okay, this is how we get our nutrition. But there are kids out there that, for example, like Jessica, the woman that I interviewed, she said at 14, when she was dealing with her body going through changes, she basically restricted eating. I mean, she would not eat throughout the day, and then she would be so ravenously hungry at the end of the night that she would turn to binge eating. And so she dealt with that. And what's really sad about that is she was skinny. If you look at all her pictures, she was already skinny, and she felt that she needed to go through this, even though she was by standards skinny and a healthy, teen, but dealing with the pressures that she did at her age. And back then they didn't have social media, but it was more like magazines and culture and that kind of thing.
Yeah, of what you're supposed to look like, how you're supposed to be. And I think you said also in your story that she worked out after she didn't even, So what what am I trying to say now? When did she realize that there was a problem? I'm referring to Jessica, who we just saw here on our screen.
And this is where, when we talk about as parents, we pay attention, right? And this is where it's so important for parents to pay attention and also be a part of this journey if their kids are dealing with an eating disorder, to kind of help them out of it, because it was Jessica's mother that realized something wasn't quite right. And so it took her about a year to really figure out. She had been watching her daughter obviously going through all this, and then this was at age 14, and 15 is when Jessica went into treatment, and her mom basically said, okay, there's something not right, let's get you into someplace where they can help you.
I kind of took a minute with that when you said about a year, because I mean, a year may sound like, oh, that's just gonna fly by, but to think that someone is just hurting that badly, and to watch your loved ones kind of go through that. So good thing she had parents that were able to kind of point that out, but I have to imagine she's still kind of going through that recovery process years later, possibly.
Well, sadly, this is a situation where, this is not an instant fix. You can go through therapy, you can get help, but you have to find that within yourself. For Jessica, she told me this was a 10-year struggle. 10 years. She even took these struggles into college, where she would have low points, high points, low points, high points, but she learned along that path, that journey, and how to kind of practice and learning the right habits and the attitudes, and basically, as she said, trusting her own body.
Trusting her own body. I love that. So let's kind of fast forward and let's go to Children's Mercy Hospital here locally. They have a center where they're actually helping young people. Speak a little bit more about that and the expert that you spoke to.
So this is kind of what launched this story, because we had talked to them and they told us that they have recently had to expand because they were getting so many kids coming in. And so this kind of was the launching point of our story. And that's when I kind of took that and ran with it. And what we learned is this particular eating disorders center is obviously one of many here in the Kansas City Metro. But this center, they told us that in the last year, their patient load has tripled of kids coming in for eating disorders. And we talked about, what they were, anorexia, bulimia, and binge eating, but they're also now treating for something new that's called ARFID, which is avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. Now, this is more of a genetic disorder where the kids dealing with this might have sensory problems, and they, it's a little more than being a picky eater. So this is one of few clinics that treats that disorder too. But just hearing how many kids that they're dealing with this, where they had to add more therapists, nurses, physicians, just to deal with their patient load, is really kind of startling too.
I can only imagine that they still need healthcare workers to come in and help, because the need is definitely still there. What I found probably the most shocking is that, and I love that Children's Mercy is doing this, but what I found the most shocking to be was that they start their treatments at 10 years old. And I found that shocking because when you think of being 10 years old, you think of like playing outside and being with your friends, maybe going to amusement parks. But to think that you have to there are children out there that are carrying this load at such a young age, it's just hard to hear.
It is scary. My daughter's 10.
Yeah, so I was going to say, is your daughter 10 years old?
My daughter's 10.
Yeah.
So to think, a child at her age dealing with eating disorders is very frightening. But unfortunately, that is what these children are dealing with. And like we said, it has to do with what they've dealt with during the pandemic, and now social media. You would hope at 10 they're really not into that much social media, but it's such a part of our culture now that they do feel it, and they experience it from friends, and it can have an impact on their lives.
And so as far as doctors, what do they encourage parents and guardians to do? I know Jessica's mom, she was kind of an advocate for her, speaking up and letting her know something's not right, but what do doctors encourage parents and guardians to do?
Obviously, watch your child, right? But they also say watch other kids too. If you're maybe a teacher or you're, a coach or something, but watch the kids. They can develop these habits where something's not quite right, like Jessica avoiding to eat, and then binge eating. But what's so important about getting well from this is the parent involvement. Jessica went through a therapy an eating disorder clinic of her own. However, it didn't have that parental component. And she said that that's the one thing where she wishes it did have.
Yeah.
Her mom was involved in her care, but she feels like with the eating disorder clinic at Children's Mercy, the parent involvement is key.
Right.
Also key too is early detection.
It is,
Catch it early, because once you catch it early, then you're more successful in the treatment of
Yeah.
it.
And this is such an important issue that we definitely need to draw attention to. Like I said, it's not talked about enough, but I think we can say that about a lot of different health concerns. So, Sharon, I want to thank you so much for joining me here at the Live Desk, and we'll be talking again soon. I know you are working on so many other projects, but where can we learn more about this story?
Well, this story airs tonight at 6 o'clock on KCTV 5 News at 6, and then we'll, of course, have all the resources of if you do have someone who's struggling with an eating disorder, or you know somebody, will have those resources posted on the website with this story as well. But tonight at 6 o'clock is when you can watch the full story.
Great. And we are taking a look at our website right now, kctv5.com. This story is posted on our homepage, so you can go there directly, and be sure to tune in as well later on tonight. Again, thank you so much, Sharon.
Thank you.